The Center for Tax and Budget Accountability is a small, bipartisan, Chicago-based public policy think tank that focuses its work on government financial impacts on public services, economic vitality, housing, education, and social justice in Illinois. Our mission is to foster social and economic justice through advancing fact-based public policy solutions. Now let me introduce our Executive Director, Ralph Martire, who along with our Research Associate, Danielle Stanley, will present the findings contained in our recent report.
Thank you, David. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
So the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability is somewhat of an odd duck, right? Because we're always trying to tie the fiscal side of the ledger to the service delivery side of the ledger. And there's one truism about public policy that rarely gets discussed, but supersedes everything else. If you have inadequate capacity on the front end, you will get inadequate outcomes on the back end. There is no endeavor in life, business, public sector, etc., where that is not true. And so what frequently happens when we start evaluating these public sector systems is no one looks at the capacity issue. They're just looking at the outcomes. And if the outcomes aren't up to snuff, people start complaining about the public sector as if it is somehow failed or flawed in design. Really, if you don't get into the capacity issue, if you don't look at this front-end capacity question, you're not going to have any kind of accurate analysis of what's going on. Now, this study is looking at the capacity issue for higher education. Now, why would we put that on the table? And the answer is pretty simple. The correlations between education generally, higher education specifically, and economic viability over time are simply growing stronger and stronger and stronger from a statistically meaningful standpoint. You know, since 1980, the only cohort of workers in all of America that have seen their incomes increase at a rate greater than inflation, so have real growth in purchasing power, have a college degree. Everyone else is earning less today than they did in 1980 after inflation. Think about that. You really have to go on and credential yourself at the next level to be a viable entity in this new modern global economy. Another thing we know about higher education is that those states that have done the best job investing in their higher education system have seen their private sector economy grow more productively, better income for their families and workers, better state GDP growth per capita than those states that haven't done it. So here's one of those correlations between educational attainment and economic viability. It's unemployment rate. See less than high school diploma, some college, or an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree. You see the greater your level of educational attainment, the lower your unemployment rate is across the board, I guess, except for art history majors, and really that's a difficult field to be in right now. But the bottom line is this kind of statistically meaningful correlation is just transcending so many different areas of the economy that you really have to wonder why state lawmakers would turn their backs on something as crucial to their economic competitiveness as higher education. So, just to drill down on the data here, you can see that according to the BLS, unemployment rate for dropouts is almost 3 times that of the unemployment rate for those with a 4-year degree. From 1979 to 2012, and I touched on this, states with the greatest number of college grads had the greatest increase in productivity, and they've also had the highest per capita incomes. The education wage gap has nearly doubled since 1979. So look at these numbers. In 1979, the gap between someone that has a college degree and someone that just had a high school diploma in wages was 23%. Advanced degree in high school, 32%. Jumped to 2011. It almost doubled over this sequence. It is just compelling how important higher education is as a core area to invest in for the public sector. And when you look at what the public sector invests in generally, there are 4 things that the state actually puts its money into through its general fund. education writ large, so that's everything from early childhood to K-12 and higher education, healthcare, social services, and public safety. That's 9 out of $10 spent on current services in the general fund. So higher ed is really a component of those core services that our state government is charged with providing to our population. It always has been, but sadly, the state's commitment to higher education has been, shall we say, waning over time. So the way state lawmakers and the governor start creating an appropriation for the general fund for higher education is based on a recommendation from the Illinois Board of Higher Ed. Every year, according to statute, the Illinois Board of Higher Education has the responsibility to submit to both the Governor and General Assembly a suggested appropriation for investing in all areas of higher ed. As this graphic will show you, from 2008 through 2017, last 10-year sequence, not once has our state actually invested in higher ed at the level suggested by the Illinois Board of Higher Education. Not once. But that just doesn't tell the full story. I think to tell the full story, you have to look a little bit more at how we've been investing in higher education compared to our other core service areas over time. So this looks at fiscal year, go to the far left, that's fiscal year 2000 general fund appropriations for those core service areas: healthcare, pre-K through 12, higher ed, social services, and public safety. Next to that is what we actually appropriated to those 4 core service areas in 2015. One thing jumps out, if you just look at those numbers. Higher education had less dollars appropriated to it in 2015 than it did in 2000 without adjusting for inflation. Just nominal dollars. Are you kidding me? Once again, to understand the full impact of this disinvestment in higher education, you do have to adjust for inflation. And the second you do that, you can see, well, the state of Illinois has been backing away from its investment in all core services since the year 2000. But it has particularly singled out higher ed for cuts. $1.39 billion in real terms, or 41%. Think about that. Our state is investing in real terms 41% less in higher education by the year 2015 than it did in the year 2000. So despite all this data showing how important higher education is to your state's economy, to individuals living in your state to go on and credential themselves for good, high-paying jobs, our state has been disinvesting, and disinvesting a pretty significant basis through 2015. Now, 2015 is an interesting year. It's the last year the state of Illinois actually bothered to pass a general fund budget. Apparently, our General Assembly and Governor have not felt it really important to satisfy that constitutional obligation to pass a final general fund budget. They didn't do one at all for the year 2016. And 2017 had a partial budget passed. We're still waiting to see if they'll finalize one. That's historic, by the way. No state has ever gone this long without passing a budget. It's just unique to the state of Illinois. If you really wanted to drill down in 2016, by the way, 2/3 of our spending that year on current services through the general fund, so 2/3 of our spending on education, health, social services, and public safety never went through the appropriation process. Never got voted on by the General Assembly, never got signed into law by the governor or vetoed by a governor. They came as a result of either a court order or a consent decree. I mean, you really can't have a less transparent and accountable process for determining how to invest your state resources in core services than to throw it at the courts. It's unbelievable. No public hearings, no public input. It is amazing, and it is in fact what they've done in Illinois. So now let's look at what happened to higher education funding in fiscal year 2016. Now, while they didn't pass a budget for the whole year for most items, they did pass into law budgets for all the educational items. So they passed a full year budget for early childhood, They passed a full year budget for K-12, and they passed a full year budget for higher education. And what you can see is early childhood got a decent little increase year to year from 2015 to 2016 of 7.5%. K-12, little cut. And then look what they did to higher ed. 67% year-to-year cut. 67%. And now we know it's not like 2015 was the halcyon days of education funding in Illinois. We were putting less into higher ed in 2015 in nominal dollars than we had in 2000. Are you kidding me? That is an outrageous year-to-year cut that can't have any impact other than harming the capacity of higher educational institutions across our state. We're talking everything from community colleges through the university system to not only educate students that really want to better their lives, but frankly, to keep the lights on. And what do you think this does as far as putting pressure on tuition? You know, it's amazing. So that substantial of a cut to higher education, not surprisingly, has helped make Illinois a national outlier when it comes to funding higher ed. So you think 37 states in America actually increased higher ed funding from fiscal year 2015 into 2016, while we were cutting it by 2/3. 37 states were increasing. We're one of only 4 states that has cut higher ed funding year to year in both fiscal 2015 and 2016. One of only 4 states in America. And of course, we're only one of 9 states in America that has cut higher education by at least 30% since the Great Recession. Now, those comparisons are stark enough. But now let me give you context. Illinois has the 5th largest economy of any state in America, $750 billion state GDP. Despite having all this economic capacity that you could, if you taxed appropriately, raise adequate resources to invest in it, we've decided to be an outlier and to significantly cut funding for higher ed. So, how did things move forward in 2017? Well, I've got good news a little bit, bad news mostly. Higher ed did get an increase in nominal dollars from 2016 to 2017. We're currently in fiscal year 2017. $70 million. Compared to 2015, however, the last year we had that full budget for the state, it was still 64% less. And then look over time. From 2000 to 2017, when you adjust for inflation, Illinois has opted to cut higher education by almost 80%. And that's the data. So we have become one of the worst places in America for investing in our future, and in particular, our future as aided by the higher education system. So one more context thing about the great state of Illinois. Compare us to the 15 largest states in America. From 2008 to 2015, only one state has cut higher ed more than we have, Arizona. I don't think we want to rank at or near the bottom in virtually every category. This happens to be per student funding in higher ed. At or near the bottom in virtually every category of higher education funding when compared to the rest of the nation. And when you take a step back, we really don't want to be put in that position when you think about its economic impacts on the state. Now, what are our prospects for turning this around and actually doing a better job of investing in higher ed? Not so good. So one thing the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability tries to do is avoid complex modeling in our work. Why? Your assumptions can very much jury rig your outcomes. So models sometimes need to be taken with a grain of salt. This model, however, we had to create because we were trying to project forward whether or not the state's current resources would support current levels of investment in services, pay our current debt over time. So you have to do a projection. This is our version of a structural deficit analysis. We had it peer reviewed by 4 different independent PhD economists. In fact, its basic construct, we were assisted in designing by one Professor James Nolan, who happens to be sitting in the audience today and will be moderating the debate later. But this version of it, at least the one we've been using the last few years, has not only been peer reviewed by all these independent PhDs, we also had it peer reviewed by the head of state and local tax at the GAO in Washington, D.C. So when we construct a model, we want you to have confidence it's an accurate model. Our assumptions here don't jury rig anything. They are the exact same assumptions the Congressional Budget Office uses when it makes a projection forward. So we assume the starting point for state revenue and state expenditures was a balanced budget in 2015. By the way, it was not. We had an accumulated deficit of over $5.9 billion, but for assumption purposes, just to see if the revenue would grow with the expenses, we assumed a balanced budget. We assumed no changes in law. We assume historic rates of economic growth, inflation, and population changes, period. Those are our assumptions. When you look at those graphed against each other, the blue bar shows the cost of continuing current level of services that were provided in 2015, the last year we had a full budget, into the future, and covering our debt load that the state has accrued into the future. The red bar is our current law on revenue policy and what it will generate. And what you can see is that there's a significant gap between revenue growth and service cost growth over time. You see that big dip, that was the phase down of the temporary tax increase, right? So we decided to give up a bunch of annual revenue, over $6 billion as it turns out. So there really is no reason to believe the state of Illinois is going to do anything to enhance its investment in higher education in the next few years unless we change tax policy to raise more revenue. And I know that's just a real popular thing to say. I mean, my job, frankly, is to go all around this state and explain why taxes are a good thing, and that's not quite as fun as it may sound on first blush. but generally speaking, there's no way to look at the state's level of spending, its position compared to other states in tax burden. We are one of the lowest taxing states, all in, state and local in the nation, and say that really the right path is to ignore the revenue side of the ledger and focus on more spending cuts. We're at the bottom in K-12 funding as a percentage, so Illinois funds less K-12 funding as a percentage of overall K-12 funding of any state. We are now at or near the bottom of the nation in higher ed. We are at or near the bottom of the nation in virtually every social service category. I mean, what are you going to cut? And better yet, why are you cutting it? I mean, if the idea is the public sector makes adequate investment in core services to meet demographically driven need, maybe the solution is on the revenue side of the ledger. So here, I think it graphically shows that we really do need a change in revenue policy. And remember, the starting point for this is an assumption that the state actually had a balanced budget in the year 2015. It did not. It had an accumulated deficit of almost $6 billion. Now, the state cut spending significantly from 2015 to 2016, and our deficit grew. How could that be? So let me run you through the numbers, because I think this really makes it quite stark as to what we're facing and why revenue needs to be part of the solution. So the revenue we had for fiscal year 2016, according to the governor's office, was $32.1 billion. Out of that revenue, we had to pay certain hard costs. These are things we had to pay by law. Debt service to third parties, Medicaid transfers to trust funds, income tax shared with local governments, just things that you have to pay by law. They come out, no one votes on it, whatever. So you take that $11 billion off the top, and that left $20 billion or so in revenue to support current expenditures in the year 2016. But then there's that accumulated deficit of $5.9 billion. It's carry forward bills left over from 2015. They're going to have to pay those by state law before the end of 2016. So that $5.9 billion, that accumulated deficit left over from 2015, actually becomes a charge on 2016 revenue. So take that out. That means you got $14.8 billion left to spend on services. They're projected to spend by the end of 2016 some $24 billion, meaning despite cutting spending on services significantly from 2015 to 16, the deficit grew from 5.9 to 9.1 billion. Now, you put that in context of our expenditure levels, that 9 billion is some 41% of our current expenditures on current services are deficit spending. 41%. Anyone in here that's kind of math challenged, I'm just going to clue you in, that's not a sustainable level of deficit spending. It's very big, it's a real problem. So, summary to point is that Illinois, one of the richest states in the richest country in the world, because of its decision to have low taxes at the state level, is disinvesting, as you saw, in all core services over time, but has particularly singled out higher education for significant cuts. There's no reversing this unless we get honest as a state with our tax policy. So I think from this point forward, I'm going to bring up the principal author of this report, Ms. Danielle Stanley, who really is going to dig through how these various cuts have impacted different universities and their capacities across Illinois. Danielle?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. Yes? Okay. All right, so my portion of the presentation is to discuss the specifics on how the budget impasse has impacted these higher education institutions. This slide here is a fiscal year 2017 compared to fiscal year 2015 in nominal dollars. As you can see, the largest nominal cut was University of Illinois, which was a total of $297 million, and Chicago State University had the largest percentage cut by 65.3%. Chicago State University, that is on the south side of Chicago, that serves majority minority students, has historically been receiving low appropriations, including Governor State University and University Park in south suburbs, and Northeastern Illinois University in Chicago. And also to note, this slide does not show the emergency appropriations that took place in November. Chicago State University received an additional $3 million, while Western Illinois received $8 million, and Eastern Illinois University received $5 million. So I just want to let you know that they did receive additional funding, those three universities, because they were dramatically impacted due to the budget impasse. Now, what does that mean for us a capacity standpoint? The media has been reporting for the past 2 years that these universities are struggling. Illinois State University has cut their instructional budget by $1 million, which means more students in a classroom, teachers probably having to instruct more courses. Chicago State University had to lay off 40% of their workforce. Initially, in the beginning of the budget impasse, the president sent layoff notices to 900 staff, including faculty, but their ultimate decision was to lay off 409 faculty positions. And that's from the groundskeeper, maintenance, people working in financial aid office, those students see every day to help them get through the academic program. Western Illinois University laid off 145 non-faculty positions. Not as dramatic as Chicago State University, but Western did decide to eliminate 4 academic programs: philosophy, religious studies, African American studies, and women's studies. And University of Illinois, including Chicago and Springfield campuses, eliminated 484 non-instructional staff positions. They also implemented a hiring freeze. And Eastern Illinois University laid off 177 civil service employees. So all these institutions have had to make dire decisions to make ends meet because Illinois has historically disinvested in appropriating adequate dollars to education. So that impacted the outcome by laying off faculty members as well. Now this is a 2014 profile of how each higher education institution depends on the state for their funding. Once again, as an example, Chicago State University depends 32% of their budget from the state of Illinois, while University of Illinois depends 15% of their budget from the state. According to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, between 1960 and 1990, University of Illinois received 30 to 40% of their budget from the state of Illinois. But as you can see now, in 2014, they're only receiving 15%. So that just backs up what Ralph was saying earlier, that Illinois has historically been disinvesting in higher education. Other universities can rely on additional streams of revenue, far as out-of-state tuition or international tuition. Like Eastern Illinois University, it's a very small amount, 8%, but compared to Governor State University, who has a very 0%. Governor State University now numbers probably have increased slightly because they did build dorms to attract international students and commuter students to attend that university. Once again, this is the 2014 data. And also, we're looking at the size of endowment per student, which supports students' financial assistance for our scholarships. University of Illinois has the largest endowment out of all the 13 public institutions of $26,000. So while they're not receiving as much from Illinois, they do have a heavy donor base that can help them sustain when the state is lacking to appropriate adequate dollars. Now this is a trend from the National University from 1990 to 2015 that shows in the red bar that public in-state universities are the least expensive to attend from, of course, 1995 to 2015. However, Illinois has increased their tuition by 50 to 100% over that course of time. Illinois tuition has increased so high that it's outpacing inflation, which means that household income cannot pay for their children to go to college, or they cannot return to school because they just do not have the income to support themselves and attend college. And so this is just the specific examples on how each university charges their tuition from 2016 to 2017. Once again, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign charges the most, $31,000 for their in-state tuition compared to $46,000 for their out-of-state tuition. Just to get a better understanding on how expensive each university is. So what does that mean? If tuition is steady increasing, students have to take out student loan debt. So this slide from the Urban Institute shows the household debt from 1989 to 2013 by race. As you can see, regardless of race, everybody has increased their student loan debt, white, African American, Hispanic. However, African Americans tend to take out the largest amount of student loan debt compared to their white and Hispanic counterparts. Currently, the national debt for student loan debt is $1.3 trillion. So this is a national problem that needs to be addressed. Higher education definitely needs to be funded at the state level at an adequate level. Otherwise, this number is going to continue to increase, and the burden is going to be more. It's going to be more of a despair for African Americans who've already taken out a lot of loans, as you can see in this figure here. Because student loans are on the rise, tuition is on the rise, and Illinois has historically disinvested in education, that has impacted the student enrollment for 2016 and 2017. For this academic year, 5,500 students have not enrolled in Illinois universities. From the 10 out of the 13 universities, they have saw a decrease in the student enrollment. Chicago State University saw a decrease of 25%. Then you see universities like University of Illinois in Chicago and University of Illinois in Springfield, and Illinois State University saw a slight increase in their enrollment. And their tuition is low compared to other institutions like a U of I, Urbana-Champaign. Also, in 2015 to 2016, you're now seeing the new wave of the Great Migration. 16,000 students left Illinois to attend colleges outside of the state, while only 2,000 students from out of state came to Illinois universities. So we're seeing that we're losing our tax base because tuition is so high that children or students are more inclined to go elsewhere instead of staying at their home state to get their bachelor's or master's degree. Moving over to the Monetary Assistance Program, which is for finding grant assistance at the state level that helps low income and students in good academic standing. This is a fiscal year 2015 compared to fiscal year 2016 to see the nominal difference of 12%. The average of a grant amount is $2,500 per semester, which is nearly not enough to sustain a student for attending that college. If a tuition is $31,000, $2,500 per semester is just a small drop in the bucket. But the MAP dollars are so critical, it determines whether or not a student will continue to attend college or drop out or take a semester off in order to make money so they can continue to go to school. So MAP is very important. And also, the MAP program does not, undocumented immigrants does not qualify for MAP dollars as well. So Hispanics, people who speak or foreign, just cannot even apply for MAP dollars. And that's another issue in itself. And the final slide is the 2015 unemployment rate by race and education level. African Americans who have a bachelor's degree or higher still are twice as likely to be unemployed compared to their white peers. And African Americans who have a bachelor's degree this is the only group that has an unemployment rate compared to the national unemployment rate of 5.3%. So despite the American dream of getting a degree so you can increase your economic viability so you can have higher wages, there's still a disparity between blacks and whites when it comes to this. I'm definitely not saying that higher education is not necessary for African Americans. I'm just pointing this out that there is a disparity that needs to be addressed, like discriminatory hiring practices for one.